And welcome back to Jeff Koinange live at the Intercontinental Hotel. What a guest we've had on the show today. If you've missed part of the show, you need to catch up with it 11 a.m. tomorrow. Better yet, show up at Riara University tomorrow at 2:30. Make it 2 o'clock in time to get into the hall, because I'm sure it's going to be standing room only, because Professor Micere Mugo will be giving a biographical lecture. It's titled Home Away from Home. Come out there, listen to her, and you will be rewarded, believe me. This is the kind of conversation we need to have over and over again in this time and this place, for someone who left Kenya, fled into exile some 33 years ago, and the kinds of thoughts that she's expounding tonight. Well, who are we to complain, Prof? Who are we to complain? You passed by Zimbabwe for a while. We have to talk about that, because you have some stories. You did when you first fled, right?
Actually, much later.
Okay.
But before I do that, let me apologize for messing up the times. You had it correct. You know, really old age. People joke with it, you know, but you have your senior moments and you have confused moments. Right. That was my confusion. No, I had another lecture this morning at 11.
But look.
So I exchanged the days.
There's nothing wrong. If they show up at 11, they'll get lunch. Charles will buy the lunch at the university.
2:30 then.
2:30.
Okay, that is correct. You are correct.
It's going to be great.
Yes,
well done.
Yes.
Well done.
But Zimbabwe was actually my second stop, because when I left, I went went through Britain, and then while there, St. Lawrence University in upstate New York, on whose program I used to teach when in Nairobi, because they have a Kenyan program. So when they heard about what had happened, they invited me to go there as a visiting professor. So I was at St. Lawrence, upstate New York, for 2 years. And then after 2 years, they wanted to extend the contract. But I deliberately wanted to come back to the continent somewhere, was offered a job in Zambia. And on my way to Zambia, having shipped all my belongings from Canton, New York to Zambia, I was told in London that I had been denied landing rights in Zambia, where I had the chairship in the English department and full professorship, because they said that President Kaunda had been told by his counterpart here that allowing me to work in Zambia would be regarded as an act of sisterly aggression between the two friendly nations. So I was stranded in London, with my things having been transferred. And the long and short, it's a long story, is that I lost everything, my books and everything that was shipped there.
Maybe they're in Kaunda's house somewhere.
Oh dear. Well, I'm not sure that Kaunda was a thief with all his weaknesses. But
wanted to read your books.
Who knows? Yeah, and that's when then, Comrade Sally Mugabe, with whom I worked very closely during the liberation process in Zimbabwe, invited me to go to Zimbabwe. Sally Mugabe was the first lady of, Comrade President Mugabe.
Yes.
Beautiful, beautiful son, daughter of Ghana and Zimbabwe, who was part of the liberation process. So that's how I ended up.
So it was Sally who invited you?
It was Sally who invited me, but I was lucky too that at that time jobs at the university were being advertised at the University of Zimbabwe. So I applied the usual way, and they employed me.
And this was the 80s?
This was 1984.
84.
Because I left 82 here, was in Canton, St. Lawrence for 2 years, and then,
So those were the early years, and Robert Gabriel was like the hero of Africa then.
Those were the golden days, ideal days, a model of what Africa could be like, rather like those moments we used to have during the liberation struggle in what they called the liberated areas, where the most fantastic things were happening, like in Mozambique, recognition of women as part of the struggle and inclusion of them as part of the history, the youth and responsibility there, like under Cabral in Guinea-Bissau, golden moment. In Zimbabwe, following independence, we had golden moments. People were reading to one another under trees to educate one another. We wrote, and this is where I'm saying there are more books we don't talk enough about, but I was actually asked by the University of Zimbabwe to lead a national project in creative writing that produced 10 books that I co-authored with Shima Chinojka for reading in schools as a part of decolonizing the classroom. Those were wonderful times. I would go into the library at the University of Zimbabwe, and next door I would hear shuffling, look over, and there was Comrade Mugabe with his security reading in the library like all of us. He used to have a session every Wednesday in Parliament where he would be questioned by the people, by the nation, and give answers, the Prime Minister's time. And then after 5 years, 6 years, it changed, turned the place into a dictatorship.
And Sally passed away.
And of course, my friend, freedom fighter Sally Mugabe passed away. She really was incredible, a woman of vision. A lot of people say she was the conscience, political conscience of, but beloved by Zimbabweans, by the way. Ghanaian,
being a Ghanaian,
in origin,
right.
but loved by Zimbabweans.
Wow.
Yes.
So those were great years for you.
Those were great years. And of course, I have to mention my colleagues were there. Ngoge Wamirie, the late Ngoge Wamirie, doing, they had fled to Zimbabwe long before I got there, because I went to the US, but they went directly to Zimbabwe. And Kimani Gechao, doing amazing work, using the model of Kameretho community theater in Zimbabwe and in schools. And I mean, Kenyans, those of us who went there can boast of having contributed to those early days of independence to create new spaces and models and very exciting things in way of investing into that new space, independent space to do wonderful things. Guto, Shedrack Guto, who is now in South Africa, was there in the Faculty of Law. So we did our national service in Zimbabwe, but they gave us a home. I will never forget. Any Zimbabwean who is watching this, please know that I revere that nation, because it gave me a home when the tyrannical system here had uprooted me from my home.
And Uncle Bob didn't mind. He didn't do the Kaunda thing. He
was very good with us at that time, but later on, after the, he started going into a one-party state, Guto was actually thrown out of the country for criticizing the government. And in fact, we had to evacuate him overnight through Zambia. So things started to change, and so on.
But for now, you tell Zimbabweans, tatenda,
chaisho. Tinotenda.
Wow, incredible. Back to Kenya before we get lost in Southern Africa. The negative ethnicity, you were talking about Tanzanians being nationalists, and I see it every time I visit that country or in conversations with Tanzanians. They are Tanzanians first.
Yes. Whatever, really, and I'm not making Tanzania an ideal place or a place that has no problems, but that nation has got so much to teach us. Really, people perceive themselves as Tanzanians. And from the beginning, because of this experiment with Ujamaa that didn't succeed in the end, that failed, but the beginnings of it taught people the evils of doing what J.M. Kariuki was telling us in the 70s, having a country that has got 10 millionaires and 20 million beggars. Now in Kenya, I'm sure we have more beggars than that 20 million that he was talking about, because that is still the same thing. I was saying today, the United States, with all their achievement, 1%, 90% of the wealth is owned by 1%. I mean, come on, what kind of a nation is this? So Nyerere did try, even though the economic experiment failed, to create equity, economic equity. And the other things Tanzanians have? Pride, national pride. Even the poorest of them, they walk proudly there, not feeling cowed. And that is a good thing. In Kenya, we lost that opportunity. With all due respect, and I'm learning to say that we cannot just take the work of Mzee Jomo Kenyatta and throw it out there, because there were a lot of good things he did, and it was very difficult to take over from colonialism. But with all due respect, he failed to create a nation, And people had rallied around him, really hungry for the creation of a nation. I still remember at independence how buses came from Kisumu, from Garissa, from Mombasa, and so on to come and greet the father of the nation. And the spirit was there, but we failed to create it. Linguistically, as I say, Nyerere at least tried. Economically, they tried, and so on. But I think that this policy that we adopted, Hakuna Chaburi, willing buyer, willing seller. And
everybody has a price.
Absolutely. And
the hate, Prof, the hate, how do we get rid of that hate? I know it'll be there for a while. I know we hate each other. I see it on the net every day. People who don't know you abuse you to no end.
Yes. And people disagree with me. Some people disagree with me, but this ethnicity, negative ethnicity and tribalism could, because I still refuse to use that word. Anyway, I won't go into the politics of the language of tribe and tribalism. But it got worse under President Moi. I think he learned to do to perfection the things that had gone wrong under Kenyatta. So it's sad, absolutely sad, because in fact, we have no choice historically than to be Kenyan, living together, sharing the space, and learning to treat each other like brother and sister. And the sooner we begin having conversation now about it actively, rather than shying away from it or being sensitive about it, the better. Because this is one conversation we needed to have at independence. As I say, in schools, in colleges, in homes, in villages, in churches, and so on. But I think we need to really look at it face to face and head on, confront it eyeball to eyeball, and really say, listen, this is ugly. It doesn't even make sense. Let us talk about it.
Absolutely.
And if we don't do that, Kenya, which has got a lot of talent, a lot of possibilities, and so forth, will not survive, because we cannot. There is no way we can survive as a nation this way. So I was saying, it's positive nationhood and a sense of being Kenyans is very important. But of course we don't want also the kind of nationalism that begins feeling so chauvinistic that we are throwing people out of our country, like happened recently in South Africa. I'm so glad that the vice president apologized at Madaraka Day. But you're right, it's an issue we need to address, and we need to address it. And I think it should be done as a national project, sponsored structurally by the government. And the Constitution actually gives us room to continue that discussion. How can we make it happen? We need to.
Sort of a brainwashing, but in a positive way.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
You must meet a lot of Kenyans who have who live in America, who have made the diaspora their home.
Yes.
When you talk to them, do they want to come back? Do many want to come back home?
Oh, of course. And one of the most painful questions and issues that one faces is when you hear myself or people like Ngugi or people like Alamin Mazrui and so on being asked, why did you run away from home? Why don't you come back? And you don't even know where to begin answering that question from, because the sad thing is that when I was in Zimbabwe, I applied twice to come back to Nairobi, and I was told there was no job for me. As I say, I can't speak for the other people, but I know it's not out of choice that they want to be away from home. Who uproots himself or herself from their home and just goes, without any particular choice? So yes, the issue is a lot of Kenyans want to come back. A lot of young Kenyans want to come back, including my daughter, the only remaining daughter I have, Mumbi. And before that, my late daughter, Njeri. I know a lot of other kids, that I sort of cannot elaborate on them here. A lot of people. And I'm telling you, a lot of Kenyans love their country. They really do. But the positive thing, and here I'm going to a space where James Baldwin took us when he said, out of pain, out of pleasantness, and so on, squeeze every drop of meaning out of the experience. We need to just squeeze a lot of drops of meaning, and as Kenyans in the diaspora support our country in every way we can, intellectually, in our thinking, in our coming here, economically. You know, Rwanda is literally surviving on support, you know, from diasporan, you know, Rwandans.
Yes.
And I think Kenyans are doing that. We can do more, need to do more, and so on. So yeah, even if we are not home physically, we can still be home spiritually, intellectually.
Absolutely.
You know, and defy distance in that way.
Indeed.
And more than that, since we find ourselves historically placed where we are, we had better historically accept that black people also need to accept that it's okay to occupy the rest of the world, the rest of the globe. People came and occupied our land.
Exactly.
And made money out of them. So long as we don't forget our homeland. What's wrong with having a home somewhere, so long as Kenya is always home and, you know, in
Well
our
put,
hearts
well
and so
put.
forth. But if we can come back physically, I agree.
Would
This
Professor
help.
Micere Mugo come back for good?
Well, you know, and this is very important for me, and I do want to say it on your program. It depends on my health. I'm battling cancer, which came back after it went into remission, and I think it came back after the traumas of losing my daughter, so on and so forth.
Yes.
It's important, and I'm saying this because we need to name these diseases like cancer and so on, that people are so reluctant and afraid and
it's killing-
ashamed
it's
of
killing a
naming
whole
and killing.
section,
Yeah.
probably.
So I'm battling that, and I'm on very intensive treatment in the US. And so I'm going to claim that space and have my health looked after. But I know, and I believe, and I trust, and I'm determined that we are going to win over cancer. And that way, then I can spend half the time in the work that I want to do, mainly reflecting and writing, or doing the kind of thing I'm doing, giving national service to some of our young universities, like Riara University. So here 6 months in the US. I'll probably run away from the US during winter. Then
Good
come
idea.
here.
Good idea, Prof. I wish we had 10 people like you in this country. Just 10.
Oh, thank you.
9
Jeff.
others, you know. You're the
Thank
yes.
you, thank you, thank
Honestly,
you.
we
thank
would be
you.
so far.
Thank you.
And we wish you all the very best battling this disease.
Thank you so
will-
much.
Like they say, it shall be well.
Thank you, thank you.
You will
thank
pull
you.
through.
Absolutely.
It's a real
Amen.
honor and a pleasure to have you on the
Thank
show.
you. So good
Thanks for
to
your
have
time.
you. Thank
Fantastic.
you. Thank you.
God bless you.
And thank you for having me.
Professor Micere, my goodness, what a woman. Superwoman at that. And a patriot, no less. If you want to hear some more, tomorrow, 2:30 p.m. at Riara University, show up. She has an autobiographical lecture entitled Home Away from Home. What a guest. What an amazing Kenyan with the kind of conversation we need to have over and over again. Spread the word. Tell somebody. The repeat of the show is tomorrow morning, 11 a.m. You don't want to miss that. Keep talking. Keep tweeting. At Koinange Jeff, the hashtag is JKL. Tomorrow night, another great literary mind and the professor's good friend, Professor Goge Wathiongo. How about that? What a week. I feel so intelligent this week.
You are intelligent, you know that.
Goodness. What was that? You quoted James Baldwin? James Baldwin? Ha!
He was a friend of mine, by the way.
Come on.
I have been very lucky in my life. But yes, yes.
What a prof.
And tell them Riera is a state-of-the-art university.
Really?
But we will talk about that some other time when you
Absolutely.
have the time.
I think they've heard you. Thanks so much for joining us. Good night and good luck. Thanks, Prof.
Thank you so much.
Great job.
Oh, lovely.
Fantastic.
Lovely. Thank you so much.
Fantastic.